I'd like to call the meeting of the NRHS Regional School District School Committee to order, and we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good evening, everybody, and I'm going to say welcome back, since we have not met in person as a committee since I think our February meeting, unless we had a meeting in the very beginning of March, I can't remember. So it has been about 15 months since we've been in all together. So it's wonderful to see everybody. It's wonderful to welcome our new members in person. So welcome, and I want to thank everybody for bearing with us with our learning curves over the time with our remote meetings and participation and trying to figure out how to run that. So it's good to be back. It feels good. It's great to see everybody, especially at this point for us unmasked. We do want the public to know these meetings are open, and you're welcome to join us. We're in the Kiva. So going forward, this is what our plan is. I'm just going to do a quick update because the governor did sign his bill that to him from the House and the Senate today. He did extend the use of remote meetings until April of 2022. So if there would be a need for us to meet remotely, we certainly can do that if we need to, but we'll try best we can to stick to in-person meetings. Because I know I get a folder or a committee, and that's what we would prefer. I believe that the word on the street is that they're looking to find some best practices of remote meeting participation and public input piece of it to maybe adjust the open meeting law. So more to come on that if in fact that is where that goes, but we do have the ability to. So this meeting is being recorded. It's also being live streamed via YouTube feed, I believe, on our Facebook page. So I'm glad that we're able to continue with at least providing a live feed, but it will also be posted on the district YouTube channel afterwards. So if anyone is not able to see the video, they can go to our YouTube district channel, I think it's called, and launch our meetings there. So anyway, welcome everybody. Our first order of business tonight is the approval of the meeting minutes from May 19th. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes if someone so chooses.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Baysware. I have a second by Mrs. Matson. Are there any questions or comments on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? And they are unanimous. That was so wonderful. Roll call. All right, bills and payroll. I would entertain a motion to recommend to accept the bills and payroll warrants as presented. I have a motion by Mrs. Matson. Do I have a second? I have a second by Mrs. Smith. Any questions or comments? I do just want to point out that I believe on what the committee saw that was posted, it looked like some of those warrants had not been signed, but I know they have been since. So there was unfortunately get updated right before we came. All those warrants have been approved by Mrs. Matson, who's our warrant signatory. So any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? That was unanimous. We don't have our student representatives with us tonight. I know that Abby was going in front of her Eagle Scout review board, so that was very exciting for her. And Callie, I believe, is prepping for her statement tomorrow. Unfortunately, they couldn't be with us, but again, I want to extend my appreciation, and I believe I can speak on behalf of the board, for their participation in our meetings over the past year. It hasn't been entirely easy for them because it has been remote, so we haven't gotten that face-to-face time, but they really had some valuable information that was able to be shared with the committee, so I just want to extend thanks to them. I know we'll have 2 new members assigned for next year, so we'll work on probably getting Mr. Young and having him come and introduce them to the committee once school begins again, and we can have public input. Is there any public input that was sent in? And I don't think we got anything yet on the YouTube channel. Because we are in person now, public input will revert back to an in-person. But I would like to just extend the courtesy for the interim, if someone does have something they'd like to comment with, you certainly be contacted with Gordy or Dr. Cadigan, with whatever comments you have, and if you can get them in, you certainly will. But we would encourage anyone in the public to come to the meeting so that you can share that with us. NDEA, I don't see any NDEA reps today. I know they're all getting busy. Tomorrow is our last day of school, so I know they're very busy trying to get all of their end of the year things done. And we don't have an update from them tonight. Next up is our budget updates. The FY22 budget update. I have yet to hear much, and I'll look to you, Dr. Kazan, if you have anything to add. I haven't heard that the conference committees of the Senate and the House that needed to work on the varying points of the budget that were passed. I haven't heard that they made any headway. That we're focused on some of the executive order items. So we're still waiting on that so that I can then go to the governor for it.
We checked. There was nothing on the budget at this point in time. They're still figuring out what to do with the excess. And of course, the budget itself. So we have, ours did send out a quick blurb saying that, as you said, that they're really focusing on those executive orders, such as extending some of the things that were pre-COVID. So no, not at this point in time. Hopefully, within the next couple of weeks, we're hopeful that we have some direction. We'll have to wait.
And I'm going to actually turn this over to you for an additional FY22 budget and ESSER funds update if you want to bring the committee and the public up to speed on what's been going on and what the stakeholder meetings and other things. So,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Exactly. So, as we had discussed, I think the last school committee meeting, one of the requirements for ESSER 3 was to hold a stakeholder meeting to discuss how the funds, in essence, should be spent. Where was the focus? And Kate Police did a fantastic job marshaling us all through that process. And again, we were not live, we were not together, so we were back to the Zoom. But it was about a 2.5-hour conversation. We really did. We were able to pull up a lot of information that was very valuable. I think we're heading in the right direction. It's good to validate that in terms of social emotional learning goals. So we did. We had a lot of valuable feedback, which will inform us on how to use a portion of the ESSER 3 funds. We keep saying $1.2 million, and it's a lot of money, but this is supposed to carry us for at least 2 years. So the issue. So in terms of that, that's what we're working on now. We're working on the actual plan, finalizing it, and bringing it to the school committee. I would think by the next meeting, Kate, would you think, or the next meeting? So we'll have something more formal to discuss with you next time.
And I saw that there was just for informational purposes, there was a script that we needed to go through with the stakeholders, so that was it the state that had sent that out that wanted you to answer certain questions.
Yeah, the state sent out a do now, and they gave us basically a timeline. That's what you referred to.
Yeah. I just wanted the public to understand that this wasn't like we just grabbed some people and asked them questions.
Yeah, it's always prescribed this, yes, so exactly. So we need to, some of the suggested members of the stakeholder group or members of the school committee, parents from every level, educators, administrators, students, community members at large, and we were able to get all of those checks. And we, I think, how many total? 18? A few folks couldn't make it, but we were able to, it was 19 total. So yes, we were able to meet the criteria for the stakeholder group. Actually, it was a great conversation.
Okay, so more to come on. Anyone have any questions or comments at this point on the FY22 budget or the ESSER funds? I think it sounds like we'll get more anything that we?
I just wanted to know that I did look at the difference between the Senate and the House for the General Appropriations Act, which is, of course, still not passed during conference committee. One of the things that was just wanted to know is that when Senator Cody's co-sponsored amendments, number 160, for regional transportation, do not pass. But I don't know if she co-sponsored it, or she was the main sponsor. One of them on rural aid did pass through the Senate, so that's cool.
Good point. There were actually a couple of amendments on that regional transportation. It was interesting, just for people who aren't familiar with how the budget process works, is when the House passes their budget and then the Senate does. If there's any discrepancies, that has to go to committee. So it's really important that as much as possible, the Senate and the House can agree on, so the Senate gets it. They really try to push a lot of the amendments that were in to try and get the number. I know there was a lot of discussion because there were a couple of those regional transportation amendments out there. And one did match, but it wasn't as much as the other one. So I believe the one that did pass was still more money than the governor had put in. So it'll be interesting to see where that does end up for us, because that's the transportation, as I believe Ms. Kester has spoken about, is something on our radar because the numbers never seem to go down, they only go up. And we've got to keep that under wraps. But what I did also notice was there was the discussion about circuit breaker transportation, that they are going to attempt this year to include a transportation reimbursement. But the unfortunate thing is that the way that the law is worded is you need to reimburse the educational expenses first, and then you can get to the transportation. So I guess it's going to depend on how those fall out. So I'm sure Jay Sullivan will have a lot to say and get some information on that. Anything else? Thank you for the update. Next up, the business manager's report. Henry had put our typical spreadsheets out, and I see one called revenue received as well. So we can talk to all of these or whichever highlights you want.
Yeah, I'm not gonna talk to the other two because they're just, everything's just finalizing and all of those other things. It's pretty self-explanatory if you look at it, you can see what's been spent and what's not. The revenue one I put in there because we obviously, we have a shortfall this year, but it's a lot less than I was anticipating. One of the things is the transportation reimbursement. Originally, last summer, the cherry sheets estimated $455,425 that we would get in reimbursement. Obviously, that was based on numbers that they didn't have yet, based on us running our buses all the time during COVID. So I was expecting our reimbursement to be a lot less. Our first payment was $195,130. Usually they send you half. So I'm expecting to get that other half in the next week or so. It could be more, it could be less, it's just an estimate. But overall, it only leaves us with a shortfall of $65,000, which is a lot less than I was anticipating. I was thinking we were going to have like $120,000 shortfall. So that is good news. The other saving grace, I guess, or to offset that is charter school reimbursement. They gave us more than we were expecting. So we are ending up with $44,000 more than we're expecting. So that helps soften the blow of the loss of transportation. So overall, I mean, these are just estimates because we still have to actually receive these payments in the next few weeks. But overall, it looks like our shortfall on revenue will only be about $27,000. And how that works is on the expense side, we have expenses that will cover that. So monies that weren't spent will go against that. So we're not in any sort of danger.
Good news, thank you. Anyone have any questions or comments on this revenue projection or any of the other financial spreadsheets that were out there? Okay, seeing none. We will move on to technology leases. I didn't know if there were any because I know as you said we had paid, but I know this is something that needs to be done annually.
We're not entering into any leases at this time.
So we'll just pass that over. And up then is our budget transfer requests. This is mandated by law that we have to, at the summary line item level, have a balanced budget. So at the end of the year, whatever accounts are in the red or black, we move some monies around, and then take the individual subcategories under each of those summary levels, make sure everything's balanced. So I'm going to let you go through the financial sheet that you have, and then we'll motion to approve these and then take questions at that point. Motions on the floor.
So these are line by line, these are not subtotals. Because this is the way I have to put it into this twice. So these first ones, there's excess money in them, and we're going to transfer it out, and then it will end up in the other accounts at the bottom. So I'm just read through them, and then we can talk about them after we have questions. So the first one is moving 19,000 out of the Templeton Elementary special needs teacher salaries. We had a year resignation, and that person was not replaced. That's why there was excess. Second one, $9,000 from the high school sub-account line. COVID-19. Need to say anything else? 100,000 out of the kindergarten para line. In the beginning of the school year, we did away with kindergarten pairs. We kind of changed how our pairs are classified, so they were moved to different accounts. So that money is left over. We're going to move 27,000 out of the middle school and high school electricity account. We've just been doing a lot of maintenance, I guess, in things to save money, and it's really starting to pay off. We're starting to see it each year. Things are getting going. At one point, we're going to get to that break-even point, but so far it's working and it keeps going down. We're going to move $40,000 from the coaching line. Obviously, we didn't have as many coaches this year as we would normally. Then $100,000 out of the school choice line. There was less students going out and coming in. And it really is truly just an estimate when you put your budget together. It's really not finalized until you get to June 30th. 75,000 is going to move out of the regular ed transportation line. Obviously, we did not lost as much as we could have. And then the last 99,000 out of the tuition for the special ed collaborators, and that is just because you'll see as we get to the bottom, there's just more kids on the private side than the collaborative side, so it's just money moving from one to the next. So all of those transferring out is a total of $469,000. So we are going to move that money into the school committee expense line, and that is in the red because of the regional agreement and just a few other things. Superintendent's office supplies, we're going to move, it's in the red $2,000. We spent an awful lot of money on mailing out those bus passes at the last minute last fall, and our payroll printer just died. So can't do without that. We're going to move $5,000 to cover our payroll software line. We added a new module to our software that we hope to be live and running with start of school. $20,000 to cover the attorney expense, which just doesn't matter how much money you put in, you don't need more. Computer software for the district, we had to buy a lot of extra software in order to run remotely, do things like Zoom and all of that. So that's a deficit of $14,000 that will be covered. Middle school textbooks, we bought $35,000 worth of 6th and 7th grade intro to literature books this year, just because we knew we were going to have some extra funds this year. So we also have to cover $10,000 for the middle school BCBA, which when we replace the one that left, it's more than the one we had. We're going to cover $1,000 for mentors. We needed to implement one part here just because of all of the changes to open fully. Clinical assistance, $28,000 in the red. This line is the line that covers basically like your contract services, like if you need a speech person that you don't have in-house or kids get evaluated. So this is kind of like a real guessing game. You really just don't know what's gonna happen with that during the year. The biggest part of this is when our BCBA quit mid-year, we had to go outside of services. So the savings we had at the top, just moving it down to cover this at the bottom. Electricity at Tucson Center is $27,000. We just haven't hit that magic number with the right budget number yet. It's just learning. Maybe next year when everyone's in all the time, we can get a real number and kind of work with that for budgeting, but it's still, we've still been guessing. Building maintenance at the middle school, $36,000 in the red. We have done a lot of the HVAC airflow and maintenance fixes. So that's why that's in the red. Building maintenance at Tucson Elementary, covering $11,000. That is another one where the budget has been a guessing game and obviously it's been too low. So we will cover that. The internet, $6,000. That was for a lot of hotspots that we had to purchase to pass out. A lot of little extra internet type things that might not actually be the cable running through, but it could be like wires or anything to do with the internet. So that's what that is. Sick time buyback. Usually we put this in school choice, but since we knew we were going to have a lot of extra money for things that weren't spent this year, we took the cost of that, the $18,526, out of the general fund. And what that is when someone retires, they have that incentive that you get paid for their sick time. We have tuition to private schools is in the red, $20,000, which I mentioned up above, is just because the students shifted to more in one than the other. Charter schools were in the red, $51,480. We had more students at charter schools than we anticipated, so I thought I was doing great on the revenue side. And then, yeah, not really. Health insurance, this is a big one, $115,094. This is an extra payment that I was able to take out of the general fund rather than school choice to just save some of that school choice for pushing the can a little bit further down the road. General insurance in the red, $21,000, because the past 2 years we've had to add Templeton Elementary on a separate price that I couldn't control. So that's why that's in the red. We actually did go out to bid and combine both our policy now with Templeton, so it's all one under us. It's a much better price. The telephone lease, $19,083. We paid this off early. It was supposed to drag out for 2 or 3 more years, but in order to save down the road, we covered it this year. Same with the building and grounds leases. We had 2 for some smaller pieces of equipment that we've had for the past 2 years, and we pay those off as well to $23,400. So everything that's left over equals $469,000. Everything that needs to get covered equals $469,000.
So with that being said, I would entertain a motion to authorize the business manager to make these transfers necessary within the line items as presented so that you can close out the fiscal 2021 budget. I would entertain a motion as such. So I have a motion by Mr. Knutson and a second by Mr. Mason. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns about any of these line item transfers? I just want to thank you for a very thorough explanation as to all the moves that we did. You have to do. It's very helpful to have that detail. We have no questions. Without any questions, then all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? And it's unanimous. So thank you, Mrs. Dexter, for this report. It's very helpful. Phillipston Town Meeting update. I will let Dr. Kazan speak because I think the Apple Daily News article said it best when we were shocked how quickly our article was on the floor and we were done. So I'll let you give me the good news there.
Chair. So certainly without making fun, I've had 2 very interesting years, depending on the town meeting. holdover from last year was, well, we went into 112, obviously, dragged up, I think, late September, I think that's when we had the outdoor meeting. So, you know, I didn't know what to expect, I never do at times. So when I went to the meeting, I have never seen more folks in that gymnasium ever. They had before 100, they had before 100, something plus. I've never seen anything. I was the only one wearing a mask. And so, which really, but anyway, the articles were flying through, and we were 21 or 22 or something to that effect. We were 30 or 40 articles. So, you know, I have all my paper, I'm ready, and school budget came up. Literally nobody said a word. They voted it, and I got a laugh. I was like, oh my God. I mean, I literally said that, and alcohol really deep. The other boy said, no. I said, I'm leaving. And so I just got up, I looked up back, and that's exactly how it went. And wow, he's got to sit next to me a year down there. So it was, in all jokes aside, it was great. I mean, certainly we were willing, ready, and able to answer any questions. I want to think that we've done a lot better. Really putting the information out to both towns. We get our budgets out to them very early. We meet with them either, well, this year, of course, looks a little different as we assume, but we meet with their finance committees very early. We answer a lot of questions during the weeks prior. So we did a lot of communicating with the town managers or town administrators. So, you know, we took the lessons learned. When I say we, such lines, the lessons learned, I think 3 years ago when we were in 112 and we went through 3 district-wide meetings. We took those lessons seriously, quite frankly, and we tried to put the information out there, obviously accurately, but as soon as complete as possible. I think that goes well, or has so far. So it really, from my perspective, it was just folks were laughing at me. My face is shocked, and I guess that made the but it was a very, very quick meeting. I just heard the echoes of I heard the echoes of eyes, so it's like I was in the playground before they were.
I thought it was a good meeting for my 19-year-old.
Well, a lot, but you know what though? A lot of course, of business in terms of, I was sitting in a section of non-voter section, and there were many non-voters from Phillipston sitting in my section because they were not registered. And they were young, and I pay taxes, I were explaining that you have to register to vote. So I think if nothing else, it's a great civics lesson for the folks that were sitting around me. You know, folks to my right, and certainly understood that. But there were quite a few people who now understand, not because of my hand, but they were like, why can't I vote? And so people were telling them, so I thought that was a good lesson. They saw it in real time. So I thought, honestly, it was a great meeting. 400 hadn't been that many people. I've never seen. No, okay, it was a sea of people.
And then when we non-registered, definitely over 300. There was a lot of
It
people.
was great. Yeah, very well attended.
And I agree with you. I think it was great. I think, most townspeople don't understand that, this is as local as it gets when it comes to government, as democratic as it is, that your vote on town floor, town meeting matters. You are setting the budget for your town, and it's something applicable to just towns. It's not the cities, it's just towns, and they don't understand just how much power we as citizens can have when it comes to exercising our rights as voters to start looking at registered for those people who showed up because there were a couple of controversial issues that did come up on board. And so I was glad that there were so many people because they did see, how things happen and how it affects them, especially where we are a veteran community and people commute and they're not involved. So I think it's important to see how every dollar gets spent.
Well, that, I think for me, and my last statement on this is that every penny counts. You only spend $1 once, which says a lot. And people were kind of like, oh my God, why are we doing $200? You know, because every dollar counts. It's important in towns like ours, and that's the business of the day. And it's important business. I think that is a lesson well learned as well, is that it's just not going to go as simply.
I think that will continue to. Okay, so we now have a approved budget by both towns. So I think, you know, just as I'm looking at this, the last piece that needs to kind of fall in place for us is understanding what the House and Senate may or may not agree upon, what the governor may or may not agree upon when it comes to the use of those ESSER monies for that minimum local contribution offset. And it is just, if they can't use it, well, they get the money back, and we couldn't, but somebody needs to let everybody know what that is, so, hopefully soon we'll find out.
And it's interesting, that's a very big piece of what's going on. We know this, and let's see what all falls.
Thank you. All right, next up, the superintendent end of year assessment. So I just want to go through what the process is going to be, because information will be coming out shortly. So the first step would be to get an update on the superintendent goals that we've had in place for the last 2 years. That document's being finalized. It's going to look something like this. You'll get a Google link, and there's all these hot links to information that you can go to for evidence. So that'll be the first step, and that should come out soon. Once that's done, I will get everyone the superintendent evaluation form, which this is the official DESI form. The question I have for the group is I can probably turn this into a Google survey, Google form, is that what it's called? You know, that probably makes sense. It's a good name for it. It's really smart, that name. If it would be easier for everybody to just go out and you know, have these things with the buttons, and you can just select it and add comments, would that be easier for everybody? I can do that, and I can also offer a paper copy for anybody who doesn't want that. So I will work on that and give everyone the option, because at the end of the day, what happens is we take all of the responses from the individual committee members, and they get rolled up, and then we provide one consolidated evaluation that needs to be presented in open session. So at this point, we're probably looking to do that most likely in August. So by the time we get the evidence, I want everybody to have enough time to go through it. I realize for our new members, a lot of the data might seem very difficult to try to go through. So I think it's okay if you just leave a comment, you know, not enough information or exposure to be able to rate this and be relevant. But it's good to, I think we did the strategic plan update last month, which was really great high level. These objectives kind of filter off of those, so I think it'd be a really good exercise for the three of you to really kind of see what we've done, because once this is completed, it does need to get submitted. We use, what is it called, Teach Point. We have a system that the summary will go into. I believe it's going to get filed with the state, and then that's the official documentation for the superintendent evaluation. The next step will be for us to vote and approve the goals for the next 2 years, because we're using a 2-year evaluation cycle. The department had changed, I think it was about 2 years ago, allowing us to do a 2-year for a superintendent who isn't brand new. You can do a 2-year evaluation cycle, and we felt that was much more applicable to what our goals were going to be, because oftentimes in 12 months you don't really have a chance to make an impact. So Dr. Kaznet will be working on his draft of the goals that he'd like to present for the committee to review and ultimately approve. Just as a separate item with this evaluation report, there's also standards, and there's this lovely, there's, I don't know, 36, 40 of them. So what Dr. Kaznet will do is also link the goals to the standards that will be evaluating them on, and those are the ones that link directly to this. You know, obviously there's I'm just looking here, structural leadership. Well, all 6 of these standards, you know, you're working on, but these are the ones that's important to them. So you'll see that as you go through. So that's to come on the evaluation. And I will, as I said, I will get everybody a Google form as well as the paper and whatever you're comfortable with. I'll give more information when I email that or I'll have Susan email it out to everybody. So that is our end of year assessment. Anybody have any questions on that? I mean, it's fairly straightforward, but it is a little bit time consuming, but it's worth every minute of review. So next up, we have end of year activities and updates. I'm going to turn that over to Dr. Kazmian to kind of tell us what's going on tomorrow, what's going on this week, because there's a lot of stuff going on, and then we can talk about graduation and all the things that have happened in the past several weeks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, you know, when we planned out the end of the year several weeks ago, we were still, for the most part, in the throes of COVID. We were the same, you know, the really hard, fast rules, and then like a fog, it just lifted. And when I say we were caught flat-footed, everyone was, because we could, you know, at one point couldn't be outside without masks, and then literally a day later we could be. And so field days then were trying to be resurrected. And so with all that, we tried to have as many normal, quote unquote, activities, really stuffed within about 5 school days, as humanly possible, because, but also, of course, you know, we're going to have at least 3 heat days, and we had to do some half days, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But so what have we done? And I want to speak to there was a very vocal group of people who were very concerned or vocal about not having step-up days, traditional. Well, as I sit here today, we could have a step-up day like any, you know, honestly, we could just load them in buses now as of today and just bus them up here and do what we do. But at the time, and we, of course, that takes planning. And I don't think, although we did communicate it out, MCAS took an exceptionally long and arduous time. It was awful. The state privately and not so privately made the statement that they did not think this through. And that's obvious, especially when you were trying to proctor and monitor tests that are remote, which our building principals literally had to sit there and watch, in a sense, X amount of students take these tests. The time that it took was just, and so MCAS never runs this way. In general, we're done by Memorial Day, in general, right? And when I say done, we're packing boxes and out they go. Well, literally yesterday, Mr. Young packed the last, or was in the box, it was all the virtual online. It was awful. So a lot of that had to play into why you can't have just children coming through. But we're also trying to, you know, maintain the quorum of COVID, meaning making sure that we're keeping people separated and the right distance, et cetera. Although as of today, it doesn't matter any longer, because they had told us during our commissioners meeting that the minute school is over, summer school is maskless. You can wear a mask, they recommend it, but don't wear masks. And they also told us, for example, that we no longer need to have masks during next year at all for the elementary. They've already made that call. So when those things change that quickly, we're not a ship that can turn around. We're an armada. We're several ships that have to turn around, and we can't do that, especially when you have MOUs in place with unions. So many of the things that we kept in place was of the MOU, right from the MOU, and it's important that we honor those, because those are agreements. With all that said, the teachers, building principals, our PTO done at TES, and just all kinds of folks really just pulled together within 5 school days and made a lot happen in a very short time. I went down when there was a bouncy house, or on TES, which I need to speak to somebody about it because I wasn't allowed on. But we'll talk later. But you know, the PTO just came rushing to, like, okay, let's do something. here on the backfield where the track is. Again, a lot of impromptu and a lot of it pushed off because of the heat. We had an 8th grade celebration today, which, graduation celebration, whatever, and it looked very different because they're part of the high school, but the 8th grade really wanted to kind of send them off to traditional high school. And, as a father and 8th grader here at Narragansett, I watched him from Zoom from my office because it was only just so many people. And but they really went above and beyond to, and I can go on and on and on. They really did work very, very hard. A lot of the things that we normally do, we did. It looked different, but they were able to get them done. As Lauren said, I want to say her name correctly, Kutu said in our, in our stakeholder meeting, I just want to have fun. And we just want to have fun again. We just want to do things that we remember doing. And that was a major focus of that group, right? The stakeholder group is getting back to this. I spoke with the NDA president today. They want to bring back the retirement banquet for teachers. It's exactly as I think that all of us are seeing at home. This is important. That when you don't have something for a while, we're hopeful that we become appreciative of what we do. And if one thing is wrong true for me, and I think there are lots of people, is that we took for granted all the great things that we do here. And I fully expect that next year it's going to be an explosion of white and blue and things. I'm going to have to pull the reins down a little bit. I'm looking at Ann Lyons, am I right? But because that's exactly what you do in. But I think though this is what they want to do. It's they really did appreciate staff, and I think that people understood how lonely it was doing this, and of course with the students as well as our they mentioned that. So I am just in awe of our folks. They make it look easy. They do. They make it look easy. It's incredibly stressful. They did a fantastic job. I couldn't be prouder. We have the prom coming up on Friday. We have our very own photo booth that Ms. Ann Lyons has somehow, I don't know, cobbled together. She's made it in her basement. I can't wait to see it. But that's going to happen several weeks later. But people are appreciative. And I can't thank people enough. It's possible.
I'd just like to give a huge shout out to everyone that made graduation possible. Knowing that everybody was in place, had to be outside, everybody's 6 feet, so many people, to, oh yeah, well, okay, whatever, yeah, because you're indoor, all of a sudden we oscillated. It was 24 hours, and I'm looking at Ann because I know, as one of the junior class advisors, the junior class is typically the ones to decorate. So Ms. Lyons was brought to task rather quickly to say, how do you switch gears to make this indoors? And I have to say, my hat goes off to every person involved, the class advisors for the senior class, the class advisors for the junior class, the sophomores as well. I mean, everybody.
Everybody really pitched in. I know I'm butting in here, but those juniors, they worked so hard and did such an amazing job. Those kids were amazing. Just absolutely amazing.
They're like Armenians. It was if the gym was the gym, things were already outside because it shows 75% thunderstorm. Of course, the sun came, of course. But those decorations went from the gym. Within 2 hours, the band had already been set up. They knew the course was going to be. Rules then about that. All the decorations up. They could have had that graduation that evening. They could have, but that's how quickly everything just went together. So it was a fabulous graduation.
The last balloon was placed at 4:45.
Yes, it was unreal. It was such an unbelievable thing to win. So.
And the faces on each and every one of those seniors, was really, as they received their diploma, as they walked in, as they walked out, this is what it meant for them to have a bit of normalcy. So important. So it was just so great between the car parade that kind of kicked off the activities. I think all of us were kind of stationed in different spots to get there. just, to be able to celebrate them and give them that closure, I think is so important. And so my hand goes off to everybody who had to put those plans in place, had to deal with the changing guidelines and whims of state and the powers that be, and also took the heat for not being able to maybe make some of those changes because, again, we just didn't have time to be able to do it. So it's nice. I do want to report that my son can't anchor the tug of war alone against the fourth grade, especially when the teachers jump in. He get right across the field today. Field day. I just want that to go on record. So I'm just, and why I bring it up is I just think it's wonderful that we're allowing our students to interact with each other again. That these older kids are able to go out and to help with the field days and build those connections and community with their younger students, which I think is really missing this year, that community and connection. So it's just.
School's gonna look different next year. I don't mean that from a COVID sense. I think that would change us quite a bit. I think we've learned a lot. I think that virtual learning will have a place. It will certainly not be mode. It just can't be. But it'll serve a purpose. But I think that what we learned is that we really do need to work on our connections. When you don't have them for a while, you realize quickly how important they are. I think that was the theme from the stakeholder. One of them, obviously. There were a couple, but that is going to be a big part of our plan moving forward next year. So, and hopefully years to come, of course, not just next year.
Anyone else want to get in this?
I actually have a question. How is, prom going to work this year?
So, when we scheduled prom, we made the decision to put it a couple weeks after graduation, because at that time, we were one of the few groups one of the few schools that kept a traditional prom. We just didn't keep it on a traditional day. We just thought that was too much of a gamble, because we wanted graduation, that was the process. Everything after that was gravy, quite frankly. So that's why we put at the time, the graduation, 2 weeks or whatever it may be after graduation. We did not want something to happen to our seniors that would ultimately ruin that they couldn't be there for graduation. It'll work now, actually, like a traditional graduation. I want to say that it's a graduation. Prom, like we remember it. We put some things in place that I just did not, undo. For example, we didn't have guests from other districts, and actually the superintendent talked about that quite a bit. We didn't, again, when we were talking about this, we did not want to mix pause. We were just coming back from high school, was just coming back full when we were talking about prom. So think about that time frame when people were, hesitant. So I couldn't undo that because we had made these plans. But prom is going to be prom. It'll be a small number, we know that for a fact, but that group doesn't seem to care. As a matter of fact, they thrive off there. They are a very close-knit group, and I think that it's, I don't know
And
how
the
many
theme
people-
is masquerade. It is.
It's gonna work.
The kids picked it.
Yeah, I know. It's gonna
I
work.
have to tell you that in hindsight, planning it for Friday benefited because they no longer have some of the restrictions on the table. They're not within mask tape. So they are really winning, and they will be able to really have that full prom experience rather than, initially when the talks were happening, I'm like, okay, so we have a bunch of kids sitting there, all spaced out, masks on, and then 3 people can dance at a time.
On separate corners of the floor.
Yeah. So, really, I think it will work out well, and it's a nice, I think, end of the year celebration too. Most of those seniors, even though they graduated now 2 weeks ago, they're here, they are here.
Or the gym, watching the cheerleaders, which I'll get into a little bit too, but they're a very connected group, and so I think that it's gonna be fabulous. I really, folks have really going out. So it's good. I can say that it'll be a traditional, prom, which 3 weeks ago,
totally as normal as any other year as it normally was. It was shocking because the, Mr. Colby came up and said, oh, how was it compared to previous years? Because I had actually been to a few graduations. And it was just like, why are you asking me that? And you're not recognizing that you had been principal before. And you have like, okay, this makes a little bit more sense. This is used to fill me in. And I'm like, no, this is perfectly fine. This is principal. This is, around me. No. This is very normal. It's like the fire scene in the back. That was everything was very well put together. I didn't have it. Honestly, besides the masks and the heat, it really didn't cross my mind at all. So I just wanted to put that out there. It's a fantastic job.
I felt the same way. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? Right, well, I will just say that tide being on activities, since tomorrow is our last day, it's a half day, and that'll be for everybody. Great job everyone for a very, very difficult year. I know every meeting we say the same thing, but I hope that people will not set their alarms on Friday morning and sleep in a little bit and get some rest of that. I know.
Right to admit that.
So those who are scheduled for the day off, don't set your alarm, and really allow everybody to focus and recharge, because this has been a very hard, taxing year. So I think that the end of the year is well deserved for everybody. So update on Lowe's. So last we met, I'm just going to kind of set the stage here. We met about a month ago, over a month ago, and we had voted that we retire the Native American imagery that surrounds our logo. And the motion was, okay, we've got some planning to do, how we're going to do that. But we didn't lose sight of where that was, because I think that now that we're at the end of the year, we need to probably take some steps. So I'm going to throw this over to Dr. Hasman to kind of talk to what process he sees. I know we're working on a new logo or mascot, but in the interim, we need to do something. So.
Absolutely. So we reached out to, well, going back to May 5th. So May 5th was the vote. That's when the vote. That's school committee. And so since then, I've reached out to a couple of communities, Neshoba, 81, and talked to a few folks from Athol. Basically, we've gone through the same process, but they're at different stages. And I think that they ran it relatively the same way, although, you can judge. So, how did this apply to us? Well, step one is that the logo has been retired. Now, we don't have, so currently we don't have a logo. If you think of it from one way, we don't have it. Just the Warriors, or that's it. When I reached out to Mr. Marks the day after the meeting, because there was a conversation then, went to what would be a mascot or some those images. I reached out and said that we'd like some assistance with that, and so the contact, and he answered yes prior to me finishing the sentence. So what we've done, and granted, it's been a little slow just because we've been focusing on all the things that we just went over, but we reached out to a couple of groups and said, okay, this is the Warrior name. We've got this idea of but it's more of a not like you, but I can't honestly think a knight, right? A knight, thank you, but it's not. Right? So we explained it out a bit, and we said that we'd like these different ideas, and so we have some from that, we're gonna have some from other. What I would recommend, so that's where we're at. But what I realized is that we didn't message that out in any specific way. So there wasn't like this, I don't know, news article or a letter that said, hey, this has been formally done. And I know this now because as I kind of go through my day and say things, I'm like, no, that can't be possible. It's possible because it happened. So what I think, and I spoke with obviously Jared the other couple of days ago, I think that I need to, I'm not doing this because it's the last day of school, it's literally the only day that I have, after the school committee meeting, is to message this out. And say, at least to the faculty, you know, look, moving forward, this is where we're at. I think though, the next line of that, say email or letter or whatever it may be, is really the next step in how the committee wants to move forward. So in other words, yes, there are some logos being, you know, I'll call it developed, to be considered. Obviously, the how both Neshoba and I believe Athol both handled this is that they went, I believe Neshoba is now with Wolves, and I quite honestly don't know what Athol. They are saying, I knew it was an animal, but I wasn't sure what the final vote was. But they put that out to the community and to the kids, right? So, I mean, literally, when I say the school committee and the community, that's what they did. And Neshoba, I went back and watched one of their the actual school committee video, and you know they had wolf, they had chicken, they had a bunch of things. I'm not joking. There was like a lot of different things, and they voted for wolf. So that's how they came, and of course then the school committee took that and then said, okay, they made the 2 and 3, and from that point, I think that, and I know that it was Zoom. Remember, no one could come together when this all took place in these 2 situations. So any type of public input was really done through virtual. When I've looked into, of course, looking into it pre-COVID, there were, and I think we've just seen this play out in Eastern Mass, I'm not getting the town. Quite frankly, there was a non-binding referendum, which was voted at the on the election, town election. You know, the school committee ultimately decided what, and I lost track of that story. So, but there was a public forum in regards to the next step. So it's truly up to the committee in terms of, that's just the nuts and bolts, right? That's just the nuts and bolts. From my perspective, I need to start messaging out. You know, we rotate uniforms and we do things in a very cyclical manner, on a schedule, you know, that kind of thing. I do need to inform, you know, and I'm not sure who's up next. We have a list.
Yeah, we have this big kind of on.
Well, right.
So we gotta get back to that.
So that's so I can message that and so that's my, you know, kind of my part. We do need to, I guess, move forward with the next step of this, so that way we can then start planning. And I know we can just, but if you notice, there's that logo is everywhere, and that's going to take some time. Obviously, that's just not something that's just going to go poof. We're going to have to, that's really come to the next, that's obviously kind of how do we then back out of all of these, what do we do, and floor, everyone's worried about the gym floor. Well, I'm worried about the gym floor, right? Because it costs close to $10,000 to redo that entire gym. And I'm talking sanding it down, completely entirely, redo the lines, that's generally when you do something like that, you change the logo. So you see that it's quite a process, but back to in terms of how do we involve the community. Go from there.
So it sounds, so it seems like we have a shorter term, right? You know, stop using the Indian head, if you're gonna do something new, we obviously don't want to use that. So I'm just curious, do we know what kind of time frame we're looking at from, because I know the resources at the now that we're working with the group, I think it was a student graduating or the final, so I know there was some resource issues.
We have a better resource now, and you know, for lack of a better word, and I don't even, that young man is working diligently, very, very hard, and I appreciate every bit of that. We're working with a company for the most part to really kind of just give folks at least an idea based on the idea that was reported from the diversity committee back on the 5th. So that was the charge at the time. That may change moving forward, right? So that may not be ultimately the, what the final will be, but I think that that's the process at this point, is getting that out there, having the school committee look at it, and getting input from the community, of course, for kids, right? Because that's an important stakeholder group. And going, okay, what does this look like? And then at that point, really it's the, okay, now start setting the plan of how do we retire the how do we do that? What do we do in the meantime? I think we can hold off on uniforms and stuff like that. If there's one group of uniforms that are so in disrepair, we'll come back to the committee, but I don't believe that there is whether it be band or anything for that matter, to a point where they're just not
So, could we look to maybe get an update at our next meeting again on where development of potential new logos would be, so that then we can come up with a timeframe? Because I think, if anyone has any other thoughts, I think you're absolutely correct to have some public input, whether we survey or have maybe it is Zoom, because a lot more people can seem to participate that way.
I have to tell you, that seems to be the, right, that seems to be still very popular, and relevant. But again, getting their feedback is important. Again, I like to mention the kids.
Well, and I was gonna just say, and with the kids now being out in the summer, in my heart of hearts, and really their input is worth, I think they tip the scales as a way to put, and knowing they're not here to participate, that I see this running into September, October, maybe, even if we had something to give to the community to look at, so.
I see that. I don't. We've passed the time frame of if we could hurry this along, we could do something next. I think we're past that. So, we'll take our time. Let's message this out. And remember, messaging this out is going to be an important part, because lots of folks are not, maybe they're not aware, of why. In other communities, not just out east, as they say, right? But next door and just down the road, that this is the right thing to do. So folks are doing that. But there still needs to be community input in terms of next steps. And I think that if you why, because that's going to be the question why, then that also has to go with it, especially kids.
Okay, so we'll keep this as an ongoing agenda item now, and then hopefully we'll put it on a timeline once we get some more concrete information from development and whatnot. Great, thank you. Any questions or comments on this?
The only thing I would say is I think the important thing too, we're fortunate that we still have our identity as the Warriors. Whereas like Neshoba and Athol have changed logo and identity to go with that. At least we're just trying to find a different logo, so hopefully that's gonna soften some of that piece, so we still have that sense of belonging, but what the icon and that goes with that is going to evolve. So I think that's going to make it helpful as this gets kind of shared in the process.
I was just going to say that it's important to keep in mind also why we're doing this, considering the fact that both the House and the Senate do have bills that work, that they concur, and is in the joint committee on education. Given the fact that the budget doesn't get approved, they are really not working on that as of right now, but I anticipate, considering that the next legislation cycle is fast coming up on them, eventually this will pass. I'm not going to add to that I'm not, from a personal level, very supportive of this. However, recognizing that the legislation is in place and recognizing the May 5th meeting and the motion that passed, obviously that's to be considered. What I do want to point out is this, I think it would be good if we had some type of public hearing, either formally here or with the superintendent. I think it's very important that we get people out there, because I think that a lot of different residents and a lot of different media alma mater are going to, it's nice that we do have the Warrior name still in our nickname, but I think it's worth recognizing that some people will read, especially after the past year or so of remote activities agree with the fact that they are not going to see that logo anymore around the building, and I think that has due respect attached to that. On the other side of that, is I've actually read House Number 581. One of my other concerns is whether or not, depending on whatever the Board of Education decides, depending on whatever the Attorney General decides, whether we will have to change the name here because they're not. I do want to throw that out there early now, in case we do have to start approaching that conversation. Because reading very closely on the actual, it's only 30 lines itself, I can see that being a possible determination. I think that's something to express to the public. I'm not a fan of that either, but recognizing this is definitely, this is happening, this is different from 2017, this is moving forward in 2021, 2022 legislation.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I was going to bring the bill up, so thank you for giving more information on that, because I think you're absolutely correct. I'm even concerned about Warriors. I don't know, based on the wording of this bill, whether Warriors is going to be acceptable, even though it's not directly attributed to Native American history. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the discussions at the state level evolve, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's some federal discussions as well that tie into that. So it will be, very interesting. And I think to your point, in one of the conversations when Dr. Kazan and I talked a little bit about this when we put the agenda together, I think it's important that we respect the history. So we may retire things, but that doesn't mean we have a bonfire for burn things. We need to respect our history, and we need to ensure that history is there in whatever respectful manner it can be. I think that it may be out of our hands because of legislation. So even if the community is upset, it might be out of our hands. But to ensure that we do respect the history of all the students that have gone through here in these communities. This is the center of the community, so.
I've watched some of the meetings with the different regional school districts where they invited members of the American Indian and Native American community to come and talk with them. And they very specifically stated that they're not asking for banners to come down in gyms. They totally recognize that that's part of that school's history, that those banners should remain and those can be respected. I will let you know that in some of the Native folks that have been posting online, they are including Warriors in the list of names that they do not go first. So I completely respect and understand the amount of time and energy that Ms. Marks and the DEI committee put into coming to the decision that they did. I do know that it is also on their agenda as one of the things that they continue to say is not acceptable to them. So, I think that bill is going to determine a lot of what we need to think about moving forward.
So I think we're gonna have some very good discussions going forward on this as we see some movement in the legislature, and then how that impacts what we're doing and what we've done. So again, we'll keep this as an ongoing agenda item, so we can continue this discussion and further information, and then plan out how we're going to address shorter term this new logo, with all of these other pieces of information that we keep in the back of our mind. So we don't want to move in a direction and then find out that, we realize that we do know a lot of things can potentially happen. So, all right. Anything else on the logo at this point? School committee comments. Does anyone from the school committee want to share any thoughts or comments? Please.
So I'd like to thank the members for stepping up. It's always good to get input. You're going to get really frustrated sometimes, but it's awfully rewarding other times. Plus, I can't do this forever. So.
That's not acceptable. I'm going to allow you to. Anybody else?
I just had a few words to say that Susan Apple, what I wanted to say is that it's very encouraging that we're going to have full in-person meetings back after over a year of remote activities. Everyone recognized progress. It's refreshing that we have the opportunity to engage with the public face-to-face again, although there's more people in the audience. On the other hand, we will have challenges on the horizon, whether or not it's
we as a district have a lot to be proud of. In Templeton and Wilson, we solve our own problems. And I plan as long as I keep the seat to keep it that way. And I plan that I will engage the public in any way possible as long as the law doesn't restrict it, because we do have a meeting law. And obviously having stronger public relations that can always be worked out. But on a personal note, while I am new to the committee, having a fun conversation with a friend of mine, I fully recognize that the best way to describe government is that it is the twilight zone. And I look forward to facing this unknown and dealing with it in the committee as we collaborate and share, and at other times intensely debating and struggling for answers to many of the difficult questions that will come before us. And I respectfully wish to add that to that.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and your comments. I just want to echo what Mr. Mason said and welcome you, the new members once again, and he said thank you for stepping up. These days, we talked about earlier when we spoke about the town meeting of being veteran communities. People are so busy and it's hard to get involved and find time to carve out those few hours that you have. So it is truly appreciated that you stepped up and ran for a seat. We are the body that kind of sets the tone for the district. We have, with that reform, we have three main things we do, but they're the most important things. We set policy, we set the budget, and we hire and hopefully never have to fire our superintendent. But these three things are so important. I think I've said it enough. We've got a great superintendent who's been able to lead the community. We seem to be able to work with the few dollars we have, and we scratch those forks together and hope a few extra things come out. And we try to set the policy. So it's so important that people step up to help us with that. And we have a diverse group of people on the committee to bring the different ideas and allow some really good debates so we can become even better. So thank you all. And just one last thing, as I touched on it before, I just want to again thank the administration, staff, everybody for making it through this year. That alone is a significant accomplishment. I'm looking on Facebook at a lot of the people, they've already ended their year, and I see the little emojis with them out the door. I'm thinking, oh, we're nice, we still got another day left. And truly, it has been a tough year for the students as well. This is, I think, if you polled them, the last month has been the best because they're with their friends, they're getting back to normal. But it has been a trying year, and I really look forward to everyone recharging over the summer and then us opening with, as few restrictions as possible, hopefully none. So, let's knock on wood here, that stays in place, so that we can get back to what we do. Our mission is to educate our students. That's what we're here. We're not here to keep them 3 feet apart. That doesn't help. So, I look forward to that next year. Okay, so our next bit of business is our new business is our FY22 rate card approval. Every year we have a rate card that we put in front of the committee to approve for the hourly and daily pay for the various positions we have. We've had, in these past few years, we've had to adjust this because of the changes in minimum wage, and I know that this doesn't meet these standards for the next, takes us into next year, but we have one. I'm curious. Do you have any, it's here for us to look at, is there anything particular you want to add?
I don't think so. Susan and I kind of worked hard this afternoon trying to figure, you gotta take minimum wage into consideration and what their alternatives are, but you also have to take in like the bargaining units too. So I think that we came up with that this is fair. It meets both standards and shouldn't cause any issues.
I will entertain a motion to approve the rate card as presented. So I have a motion by Mrs. Nancy. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I have a second by Mr. Riggs. Any questions or comments on the rate card?
Madam Chair, I'm just curious what the increases, not go through all of them, are they minimal, is there a range of increases? Because I don't know comparison.
We actually took Some of the things like our long-term teacher sub is people. Every year that contract changes, we need to adjust that. So that's one of them. And then the other ones that are the hourly wages, we came up with a figure because the minimum wage keeps going up, but it does it in January. So we just changed it so it hits that point now. In the past, we've had like, okay, for these 3 months, it's this and that. It's just way too hard to payroll, so we just adjusted it, so we're all covered for the whole entire year.
I think attached to one, like probably this June agenda from last year, you'd be able to go and find that. But if you can't and you need it, I'm sure that.
Oh, I was just going to say, Bobby, that I did actually compare from last year's, and I would say teacher substitutes went up by $1, teacher substitute staff was went up by $1.50. Those were the two big ones that I noticed in comparison to a lot from last year.
Any other questions? Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That was unanimous. And those rates will go into effect September 1st and be in effect through August
We
3rd.
already have some are budgeted on the old ones, so, yeah.
All right, were there any surplus items? We carry this as just a normal item on our agenda, and no, we'll pass over that. Superintendent goal setting for FY 22-24, spoke about this earlier. Dr. has now work in the next couple of months of coming up with his draft goals and the indicators that they map to, and they'll be presented to the committee for approval. So that's coming up. So here's a new item, so you can put it into ongoing business and bring it up afterwards. Next up is the NASC conference. I'm not sure if our new members are on the mailing list yet. NASC sent out this little brochure probably a few weeks ago, so my guess is you may not be updated on that. As far as you had a chance, I think they usually reach out for new member updates.
I will do that, I haven't gotten it from that, but
I received the brochure.
You did, so yes, you were on it. So there's a joint conference that happens in November. It's November 3rd through November 6th between the Mass Association of School Committees and the Mass Association of School Superintendents. Hard to tell you that. We typically, whoever can go is welcome to go. It is, I think it's a third, might be is that a Wednesday or a Thursday? So I know for people who work, it's hard to get the time off. It is worthwhile. This year they're doing a live and virtual component. I'm still trying to get some information on exactly what the virtual piece is, because if we register early, which is before July 15th, it's $345 per person. If we register after, it's goes up to $495. Plus, it takes place at the Hyannis, the Resort and Conference Center in Hyannis. So obviously, the hotel rooms and stuff. So if you're interested in going, I will actually, I'll try and take a picture of this, or I'll go out to the NASC website and send this to everybody. And if you can let Susan know that you're interested, she usually takes care of getting all the registrations together. As I said, I'm going to try and find out what the virtual piece means. It doesn't sound like all of these sessions will be virtual, but that may not be true, because if they're not all virtual, then I don't get the benefit of signing up to only see a couple of things. So I'm not sure. I need more information, so I'll reach out to Lennon Company and find out more and get that information out there. For the new members, there is a requirement that you do training. I mean, it's 8 hours of training. NASC, who are members, the district is a member of NASC, and they provide that training for us. There is a charting the course class that you can take. Additionally, when you attend the conference, there's enough of these sessions that map to the specific areas that you're supposed to have training in, and you end up with your 8 hours. There's a form that gets filled out, and they sign off on it. So it's a way to kill two birds with one stone if you're interested in going. I've been several years. It's a nice chance to network with other school committee members, because oftentimes we sit here and we think, what are we doing? And is it us that we really don't know what we're doing? And then you meet other people and you go, I think we're okay. Do you really know what we're talking about? So it's a great chance, and especially our local school committee members around. It's a nice chance to meet them and our NASC is to know that they have monthly lunch and learns. They do, we're Division 4, and I think twice a year they do a Division 4 presentation. So there's all sorts of really good things that happen. So I will get more information out to everybody else and send this out. I find it on the website. It's masc.org if anyone wants to go out there. Once we get you signed up and officially registered with MASC, then you'll be able to log in. You'll get an ID and you'll get to log in and go through all the resources. So it's a great organization. And nice group of people. And actually, their current president is on the school committee in Ashcroft this year. So, okay. All right, there were no items that have come up within 48 hours, so address those.
Yeah, actually, we don't often have one, but this is all great news, so I definitely want to share that, is that we have been working hard. Every graduating class since I think about 2017 has made a donation for an electronic sign. There's a story behind that, but I won't labor it today. So, of course, the last couple of groups have not been able to donate, quite frankly, because. So we reached out to the Athol Savings Bank if they would be so kind to kind of put us over the top in terms of donations. And we just found out yesterday that they have approved a $10,000 donation towards it. So we're just super happy about that. And so we're getting everything together and we're working with.
I was wondering what's going on up there.
So hopefully by the start of school, there will be a sign.
And we won't need to take the letters.
Yeah.
Oh, no, right. I always get nervous when the signs go up because when certain letters fall, you want the message is going to say.
You know, they've been with Lyman Signs, local, so we've been working, well, hopefully when we can, we're part of the process. So it's been really, it was just a great call meeting yesterday.
That's excellent. We certainly appreciate that. Also, I know they do our banking program. Did they do that in TDS? No, they didn't.
Not this year.
This year.
They have a BES for.
They're going to be doing a press release.
Wonderful.
They did a photo op.
Excellent. Great news. Okay, well, thank you for sharing that. Yes, yeah, we definitely will. I think we need to find out.
Once we get the
We need.
letter
Yeah.
stuff in hand.
We'll have to formally accept the donation too.
Right.
So once we do that, then we can.
I did ask her if it was okay for us to announce it.
But please don't forget to mention that when we do formally accept it. Okay. Yeah. I can't wait to see those photo ops. That'd be great. All right, next up we have a couple of different things under superintendent report. I know we're going to talk about the COVID-related updates, staffing updates, anything else. We also usually do enrollment, and then we do have to talk about school choice because we'll have to make some votes on that. So I'm going to turn this whole section over to Dr. Kazan, and we'll hit everything.
I'm just going to simply say everything, with the permission, Madam Chair, that everything I discussed is part of the superintendent report, quite frankly. So I would certainly bring all these wonderful great things up during that point in time. We're ready for the end of the school year. I think that's apparent. So I think I'll just end it that way. When we start talking about staff, there is what somewhere. I mean, we're right now. I don't believe. I think we have one unfilled position now. At this time of the year, generally we're scrambling, but we're not right now. So we seem to be set. We have. I keep bringing up TDS on purpose. Those 5 teachers per grade level. One of them, one teacher per grade, is sort of 3, or will be funded once we do the grant. So the fact of that is, I keep saying that because those are the positions that we really hone in on first, and then we can work our way out. But ultimately, we are staff right now. That's great. One other thing quickly is that, we've already talked about Rick Moulton, originally we accepted his resignation, really the rest, we just refused to take it, but eventually we had to replace that. So, we went through the process of, pretty rigorous, candidacy for that position, and last week, we offered and he accepted Mr. Keith Parker as our new facilities director. I mentioned that out to the district, was supposed to do it today, we just ran out of time. He will start on July 1. He comes to us from the Devereaux School, right, 20 years experience being the facilities director for all of the Devereaux School, which is multiple nationwide, and so he lives in Barry, and so he's local, and I think he's going to be a great fit. And again, when it's appropriate, we have time, so bring him for you to introduce him from there. In terms of enrollment update, I'm just going to really just skip to school choice, quite frankly, because by this time of the year, enrollment's pretty steady. We're pretty much level. It is what it is. We did send out a survey to all of our homeschool students because we saw, remember during the budget discussions, we saw a huge uptick in homeschool requests or students who are actually being homeschooled. And the 15K total, 17 have indicated they will be back next year, given everything that that's going on in terms of COVID. So that leads into the reason why we bring that up is that plays into the conversation when we start talking about school choice. So I know we are having difficulty with our monitors, but you have in your packet a graduated student class list. Right? It's attached. It's attached to me. And so what does that mean? We always leave out pre-K and we leave out kindergarten because those numbers are so in flux that we do not sit here today and say, oh, we've got plenty of room to add school choice or something to that effect, because that's not necessarily the case, because we have a lot of late entries, etc. So ultimately, what you should be, hopefully you're seeing that you have for you, is what our numbers are in terms of students who are grade level. Is there a problem with that? So I added in students who are homeschooled. Even if they've indicated 15 in whatever grade they're going to come back, because that really makes it's a lot safer to do that, because although there might be 10 kids who are homeschooled in the 3rd grade, and we know that 7 might come back, it's safer to assume that all 10 are going to come back at some point. Why? Because they're taxpayers. They could access the grades at any time. They could come back at any point, and they could leave at any point in terms of homeschool. So when we were figuring out what availability, if any, we have for school choice, it was smart move just to really err up on the side of the highest number possible of students. Okay, so in thinking of that, if you look through, again, these are graduated, so simply district, when you look at the class of 2033, your first graders, that's next year, as of July 1. They're actually kindergarten right this very second, but we graduated them. I just did that and said, look, they're now first graders. But I wanted to give you a sense of how many total students were in each grade. If you divide by 5 or divide by 4, that has to be part of our decision making. Not knowing how long ESSER 3 monies are going to last, etc., it is my recommendation that we accept no child in terms of school choice. K, I'm going to say that, although they're not on the list here, K through 3. You have an opportunity, if you so choose, to accept 10 students, our magic number is 120, just so we're clear. 100, I mentioned that last, it was 120. So as it sits right now, I graduated fourth grade, right? When I look at my fourth grade, they have 110 students. We know that if we do that, if we add 10, that makes 120. Extra money's going to run out at the end of next year, they become fifth grade and you're up here. You see what I'm saying? So I left that kind of as that's something for you to consider if you wanted to. I'm not recommending though, take any school choice kids between K and 3 without a doubt, because you can see the numbers there. Even with, we have 122 of next year's second grade, 113 next year's third grade, and 110 in grade 4. So again, 3 of those being school kids, but I need to put them in account because they easily come to school at a point in time. Okay, and their share is very valuable when it gets down to the fact of class sizes. Leaving kind of grade, next year's grade 4 kind of off to the side, I am recommending that we go to the 120 in next year's grade 5. Make sure I get this right. 6. I think it was right. Grade 5, we can take 7. Grade 6, we can take 10. Grade 7, we can take 7. Okay. Grade 8, they're already at 122. That's another possibility. We can talk this out a little bit. They're technically the high school. So although they're technically the high school in 8th grade, they still only have 5 doing it, 6 with math. But we do try to bring as many kids into the 8th grade because we and it was majority district 9th grade. Okay. But again, I wanted to make sure I stayed true to the 120. You're already sitting at 120. Next year's 8th grade. That is the largest. That is the largest class in the district. It has the most residents. Grade 9 and 10, we can take 5. In grade 9, and now I just did the math, folks. I don't really think that 31 children in the 10th grade, you understand that I just simply put down 31 because that would equal 120. But I would not go any higher than 10 for the 10th grade. We have the room, we have the space, we have everything, but that you're not going to take in 31 school choice students. We are not taking any, although we have the room, junior or senior year. By that point, they're well engaged into their high school career, and they're on, I don't say on track, but they are, and so to add to your junior and senior classes really it kind of disrupts kind of the flow of things, quite frankly, and as we look forward, quite frankly, to the MOUNT program, not next year, the year after, when we start doing dual enrollment, et cetera, hopefully we, we're crossed to get accepted in the program, et cetera. We don't necessarily want, but, well, we can take advantage if we want to take it. Right, so in other words, again, but we're not talking about that at this point in time.
So let me just, because I have a couple questions, just want to
Yeah.
make sure. So on the sheet that we're looking at for 5th grade,
Yeah.
You indicated 7, but I'm showing we have 140, 6. So I just
The
wanna
same,
make
I'm sorry, I put 7.
6,
I'm sorry. Yes.
and the same with the 7th grade. I just want to make sure that we're going to motion on something.
Yes.
Okay, so that's 7 to 6 as well. So just so that everyone is aware of what the policy is for school choice, and what we have to have this discussion today, I just want to go through the policy so that we understand what we can, we should be looking at, what we have to do, and what we can do. So obviously, by June 1, we had to decide whether we were going to withdraw from the school choice program. So if you're going to participate, this is at a state level, you don't have to do anything. So we were okay because we didn't have to vote, we were going to stay in it. And that was a switch. Years ago, you had to vote every year to stay in it. And they flipped that. Because if you decided to pull out of school choice at the state level, you had hearings, there's a whole bunch of things. We do in place. Resident students obviously are given priority placement, and that's, I think, including those homeschool students, we've done exactly that. Siblings, so when we get to how do we choose school choice students, siblings will take preference over someone who doesn't have a sibling already enrolled in the district. So, and that's important. You can't choose two, and they both get chosen the same year, 1 year are really enrolled, so there's no preference. So, the selection of our non-resident students for admission is a random drawing. So we get everybody who's interested, and we see how many spots we have. If we have enough seats for everybody, everybody gets accepted. If not, Mrs. Varney takes our bingo hopper out and does a random drawing to select.
You're now automated, Madam Chair. So
I want to see us.
no more bingo balls, we're now automated. Thank you.
So we do automated random selection. And we have to do that either by the last week of the school year, which is where we're at, or the latest is July 1st. Our vote tonight will indicate selection for school choice students that will happen for this July 1st, by July 1st date. We'll also discuss when we want that selection to happen. After that, there's a second round of school choice, so we do have an opportunity as it gets closer to the beginning of the school year. If in fact we have people move in, people move out, and our numbers will might be able to accept additional students, then we can go ahead and do a second lottery. And that is by, I think, the first week, during the week immediately preceding the opening of the next school year, but no later than November 1st. So we have that kind of window to do the next selection group. So just want everybody to be aware that this isn't the only chance we have. If we do have opportunities to add some additional seats, there will be a second chance after that. So, I mean, I just want everybody to have that information. I just don't go in.
And so the question becomes why would we want or need school choice? So since July 1, 2016, since I've been here, we've actually, we were almost upside down when I first arrived here. We almost had more kids at school choice without them. That has taken a drastic turn. And we were plus as much as 89 or 100 kids, a couple of years ago. But a decision was made several years ago prior to becoming the board that insurance, our portion of the insurance for staff was put into school choice probably as obviously to save money for them on the general side. Well, that lives and breathes there to the point of about $500,000. That is a dangerous, we have said this now, that is a dangerous place to put insurance money, more salaries for that matter. Because if you go upside down, you don't have enough school choice money. The state does not allow you, that's why it's separated into two different things. So one is a revolving, which is money to get. And when it goes out, it's an expense. So they make sure that you just can't balance, necessarily. So the point is that it can happen very quickly during the budget cycle this year, or during a budget presentation. We showed that if you stayed on the same track that within 3 or 4 years, depending, we would be upside down. We would be spending, we're not taking enough people. This allows us to stay balanced. By the way, we have no control, nor do we know anyone who's going to school. I have no idea until right now. We get the preliminary report in December. It's not finalized until June, as Anne Marie pointed out. So we need to make sure that if nothing else, we look at, well, it's not on here, but the senior class that just left us, they had 13 school choice students. Whenever they came on, I don't know. And we generally lose a few in the 8th grade, whether they might be kids who go to money tech or school choice to us. The district doesn't work, but they're school choice to us, but they then lots of times in 8th grade, kids go their own way. So I need to factor in that loss as well in order to stay balanced in terms of the the numbers coming in, school choice in, based on what I just relayed. Have we discussed this with both towns? Absolutely. Eventually, we're going to have to move this to the general fund. There is no way around it, because you just cannot and you should not keep this, keep insurance, if nothing else, in that, in the revolving fund, because it's disaster. So, in order to mitigate some of these issues, until we can figure out budgets and the state gives us all the money we need, want, et cetera, this is the best way to, to take safely and what we can educate with good sense, take in the amount of kids that we can, so that way we balance the number of kids who are going to leave because they've graduated. If nothing else, I mean, we could.
Does anyone have any specific questions at this point? I know, for us, been on the committee for a long time, school choices comes up every meeting, every budget cycle. And we will, in the next couple of months, and it will give us a real good look at school choice. She'll write that down. We did one a few months ago that came up with that projection of being in an upside down position within, I think it was about 3 years based on whatever the assumptions, whatever they have, and we'll update that. But does anyone have any questions right now that they'd like to ask before we put a motion on the table with the recommendations that Dr. Cassidy has?
How many elementary teachers per grade do we have?
Now 5 per grade.
5 per grade.
General fund, the towns of Phillipston and Templeton in chapter 70 only fund 4. So COVID, in the weirdest of ways, was, trust me when I tell you, I don't like saying it this way, it saved, it really made that situation tenable at this point. If we did not have ESSA and we didn't go remote, we'd be at, in some cases, which we've already shown, 28, 29, 30. It isn't a space issue, it's a teacher issue.
So we have enough rooms in Central.
We have 5 each, yes.
Okay. And that goes from preschool to grade 5.
We have 2 pre-K, actually 3 pre-K.
For next year.
Yeah, 2, and then 5 throughout. 5 K through 4. I think.
Remember, we moved the 5th grade up. But the 5th grade still has the same challenges. It's really 5th, 6th, and 7th. We do have 5 teachers, correct, for 5, 6, and 7.
Let's break it down by content, like you do. Have science, social studies, ELA, there's core. And you really can't do much more than, you can't do much less than that. You have to at least teach the core. So you have to make the schedule work. So once they get to the middle school, the way middle schools are built, then it gets into the 5 teacher rotation, and both of those are actually fairly, you're good. I mean, they're fun, trust me. But the elementary, I don't feel confident, right? Because if we go to 4, for example, if we went to 4 to, and I did not count in homeschool, but we'd be 4 teachers in the first grade, we'd be at 28, we'd be at 26 in the 3rd grade, 27 in the 3rd, pardon me, and almost 29 in the 4th grade. And that does not count students who were homeschooled, but that was just the number we had in those classrooms at the time. We have houses being built all over the place, as everyone knows, and so, but does that generate kids? Well, maybe in a couple of years, it doesn't mean kids are moving in like automatically, but we've started to see an uptick in that as well.
So a couple of questions. The first one being, you talked about having 5 teachers in the elementary school. Does that include the specials moving back to their roles as specials, or how is that working?
The Unified Arts folks, the specialists, have moved back into their original traditional roles. So next year we will have art, PE, health, music. Anyway, and we also have interventionalists. I'm sorry?
Library slash-
Library slash, we have our interventionists back, so we have our math tutor, our ELA tutor, they were pushed in as well. So there was, remember, that's why they're starting school at 9 a.m. They did not have enough teachers to rotate. We had to push every teacher we had into classrooms because of the 3-foot. So we just third of them. So that won't be the case thankfully next year. I'll be able to pull back into our normal configuration.
And then, my other question was, you said no one for 11 and 12. Now, what happens if one of those students, their families, they come school choice, right? How does that?
Yeah, so this has been the biggest, we had 41 total students that this, I'm about to say applied to the last 18 months.
They haven't even accepted last year, right?
Well, no, you're right, oh, absolutely. But in the old days, which was only a couple of years ago, you could school choice in place. So Mr. and Mrs. Casavan, we move out of Templeton and we move to, I don't know, Town. And we call us up and say, hey, we like it, because you're awesome, we'd like to keep them there as school choice. And we'd be like, sure, that's easy, they're already in a seat, we just call it school choice in place. That is not how it goes. You know, like, the state said, no, you gotta give everybody an equitable chance. So in the scenario, you have to come out and go back into one of the line draws and maybe get accepted as a school choice student. If you have seats available, then you'd have to wait for when we actually did. But so we told a lot of children that they had to go at a reasonable time. So we were trying to find like these natural breaks. There's no natural break in February, after February break until April, which is fine with us, but some came like this, because Christmas vacation was right around the corner today. So a lot of difficult conversations. They were very hard conversations. That's why we messaged this out a lot. Even last year, we messaged it out. If you move, you cannot assume that you are school choice. I don't know, we really put that information out there.
To that point, would we not want to have a couple of spaces that we say that we're going to have 11 and 12, only for our own students, if they would move, who would want to finish their high school year here at Kansas? You know, because I'm thinking if he moved and my son was a senior, he would be able to finish his last
So
year.
here's the problem. Let's just say we did 2 in the junior year and 2 in the senior year. Well, once I open that up, any junior or senior that are on the list, now remember in this scenario, I don't know that I'm moving yet, right? So if there are 5 kids, say, I'm a junior, I want to go to Narragansett, I fill those 2 spots. Those are full. And then you move, then little Chris moves. I literally just go on a list now. And maybe someone leaves, maybe someone doesn't.
But having those 5 spots at least leaves the possibility. Not having the spots, there's absolutely 0 possibility.
And so you're right, except for the fact that we have to draw the lottery at 2 times. So if we say 5 spots and there's 5 who have a check, we've got 4 spots. So there's a chance maybe there'll be a couple. We can't just automatically take school choice anymore. So it's not like someone calls us on October 3rd and says, I'd like school choice, and we go, oh, okay, come on. There's the formal process where we have to approve how many seats. By July 1, we've got to do our first poll. We'll reassess before school, see if there's more seats, and then do the next vote names.
It's a gamble, and it's not, it certainly would work as long as no one leaves. Right? I know I hate to say it that way, but I was just checking with Susan. We have, I think, 3, how many juniors?
Yeah, 4 11
And 1 senior.
and 1.
So let's say we go 5 spots. Well, guaranteed, we open up, again, this is a good thing. And I brag about this a lot. People want to come here. If I wanted to, I could probably take in 150. One year, we could have taken in 40 kindergartners if we so chose, okay? They will fill. We know this already, but to your point, if someone doesn't, well, let's say they fill all the spots up with school choice, and someone literally moves out of state, and they're just gonna, okay, well, there's an opening, so you would set a threshold, so you would say, if I use 5, that the 11th grade has 74. So let's say you just roll around up to 80. just to make it, just so we can remember. Do you have 80 spots? And of course, they'll fill, they will initially fill the school choice. I know that. We know that. So as long as, well, if the Lucas Cascade moves and no one else is left, I literally sit on a list and then would have to go to school where my parents moved to. So I mean, it would work, but I'm just saying, given how many people we have requested to go to school choice, I don't know. By the way, if I have more than that, then I will. They go on a wait list. So Little Chris Cascade goes to the end of that list. Well, but eventually it becomes, right? I mean, we've already filled them and I moved mid-year. We don't do the lottery till November.
Okay, so it's on the lottery.
I sit on the lottery list and I could, if there's an opening, someone else opens up. So it becomes really difficult.
So my thinking was that you wouldn't have a long list of the 11th and 12th grade, but you're saying that you do.
It varies, honestly, it varies, it really, really does, and by the time people want a school choice in your 11th grade, I'm gonna say to you, why? And by the way, I can't ask why, school choice, I can't. So in other words, there's the school, you know what I mean, so I mean, we have a lot of trains and kids go both ways, from our school to every other school, so that's not the reason why we did that. We did that because we know that in the next, hopefully, like 2 years or so, that we'll be able to start our dual enrollment program. And we'd rather start off with the numbers that we believe we can literally financially afford. Quite frankly, you know what I mean? So it's also, it's people piling to Gardner, but they do it for school choice. Well, I'm not ready to, I don't know how it's gonna work. I don't know how many seats we're gonna have. I don't know what the cost is gonna be. So we're trying to be really prudent while keeping those numbers down, in hopes that a lot of our juniors will be seniors.
Yeah, so you had said, you had suggested, or strongly suggested not to, open the school choice for grade 1, 2, and 3.
And it was on the list for kindergarten.
Okay, and kindergarten as well, which leaves open, 4, 5 in the elementary.
We're just fourth out of TPS.
5 is in middle school?
5 is in.
Okay, that's what I had asked earlier, and I thought you said 5 is elementary. Okay, so, my thought is, and I don't know if you could, give me some insight into this. I kind of talked through it. Since the last year with COVID, meaning like last year, the end of last year, March on, beginning of this year, and through it, I got the feeling, talking with people, the frustration and, just having the feeling that the kids didn't really get enough attention, and it didn't really get learn as much as they could have if they were in class. So my thought is nobody is open in elementary school, just to keep it down, all numbers down. And so all the focus is on the kids that we have there, and they have smaller classrooms.
And that's why, again, K through, and I kind of put an asterisk on the floor, right? So because transition years, people love to come in during transition years or prior to transition years. So for us, that's 4th grade, because they transition, 5th grade, middle school. 8th grade is it's a transition no matter where it's located, but I only offered out the 4th grade as there's an opportunity there because if the ESSER funds went away, the 120 mark was made that the building principal really in those administration felt that was a number that could be, serviced appropriately. Right? And so how many kids could we fit into a room? Literally, if this was about money, just clearly money, oh my gosh, I mean, I could fit 26, 27, 28 kids in some of these older rooms, quite frankly, because they're bigger. And so I could, if it was just about taking anybody, but that 120 was set because we knew that roughly, give or take, that's 20, 25 kids per class. That's a good solid level. The elementary, we're not doing that. Remember, it is what it is, but I have to go through it. Right now, the middle and high school, those are very doable numbers. Those are very safe numbers. They're very, those are numbers that we can adequately service.
So it seems to me, based on what I'm hearing from people, that I think if we look at, kind of split this into 3 different groups, and let's focus that way. So at the elementary level, they have an opportunity in 4th grade. My personal opinion would be, that would be something that I would want to hold off on until maybe our August meeting, and do that as the prior, because we have too many families that, I think time and time again, we hear like, oh, you can't put my kid down on the census, and then all of a sudden we have kids show up, where they moved into town and we can tell. So I would personally be more comfortable addressing the elementary as a whole, maybe in the August timeframe, so that we can get that prior to school lottery going. That was just my opinion. I think the middle and the high school, it sounds like the logic that you presented to us makes a lot of sense. And we probably have more opportunity based on the number of teachers to take those numbers. And I would like to just talk a little bit about 11th and 12th grade, just based on some of the things that we had talked about. Would we want to consider opening up a few seats there? I get some of the issues, and again, maybe that's another one that we'll look to the August timeframe to really think through it. I know that they're just finalizing course selection at the high school. They're looking at how many kids in each class, and maybe that's a better discussion, those 11th and 12th graders for that August timeframe. Again, that's just my personal thoughts on that. So I'd like us to take a motion so that we can have some more discussion. I think I'd like to, let's do the elementary first, and I'll make the motion because I'd like to. That I would motion that at this point in time, that we would accept no school choice children at any of the K through 4 level, and we will reconsider in the August timeframe. So,
second, I'm sorry.
second for this. So there is a motion in the second. Is there any discussion or comments on that? Okay, so all in favor of not accepting school choice as of this point today for kindergarten through 4th grade, and we will reassess in the August timeframe, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And abstained. Okay, so that was unanimous. So at this point in time, there will be no K-4 school choice lottery that will be held within the next couple weeks. The second group then, and I'll go ahead and make the motion so the numbers here, would be based upon Dr. Kazman's recommendation that we accept 6 school choice students in 5th grade, 10 school choice students in 6th grade, and 6 school choice students in 7th grade. That's good, I said that's right. So that is my motion, and I have a second from Mrs. French. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained. So that was unanimous as well. So that'll be our first lottery, and we'll get to the date before that in just a second. For the high school, which will include our 8th grade, based on Dr. Kazan's recommendation, I'll motion that we accept 5 school choices students at 9th grade and 10 school choices students at 10th grade. And a second from Mrs. Menzel. Any questions or comments on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? So that was unanimous as well. And once again, we will reconsider, any other opportunities in the office time to do, right?
Correct.
If you're busy, yep, so it's just 9, 5, 9, and 10. We will reconsider this in the August timeframe, and we'll actually review every grade because if more opportunity exists, that Dr. Kasman, you feel that we can take in more students, we'll address. So what does that mean from a community perspective? If you're already on our school choice list to be considered, you're okay. If you're on the list and you don't want to be there, please contact us so that we can take you off the list. If you would now like to consider being added to this, please do so. From a timing standpoint, I'm going to take the recommendation, actually, this is Barney for this, because she's the one who has to facilitate the actual drawing. So what calendar date would you like all of the school choice requests filled out by so that we can do, if necessary, a lottery drawing?
Let's do it, can we do it by Monday of next week, is that too short?
So we will have all of the requests in by the 21st, and we will do the lottery, so I'll close the business on the 21st, and we'll do the lottery the first thing in the morning on the 22nd of June, yeah. We have to do it by July 1st anyway, so. And again, we, a couple months ago, did announce, get your name on the list, because we would be addressing this one, but we do have quite a wait list already, so. What's that? What's that? Yeah. Bye. So by end of business on the 21st, so that was 5 o'clock? 4 o'clock, so 4 o'clock is the end of business on the 21st. So that will be when, application will be accepted, the drawing will be done on the 22nd for any grades that have more requests than we have seats available. For anyone who is in that situation where they have more requests than seats available, if you don't get selected in the initial lottery, then your name would still remain on the list to be considered in August if we did have additional seats. So only unless you tell us to take it off, we carry that name forward. That's correct there, right? Okay. Any other questions or comments on school choice at this point? Okay, good. Thank you for putting all of this good information together. And we look forward to having our seats filled and the lottery that needs to happen.
Let me just say again, not all of our homeschool students will be coming back. So this creates an opportunity for an extra spot or two. What it does is it makes sure that, again, if I have 10 homeschoolers in whatever grade, only 5 went homeschooled because of COVID, they're coming back next year, 5 will be what we call traditional homeschool. They have been families with homeschooled for forever. That's okay. In other words, that's a good thing because it still keeps those numbers ultimately lower if no one moves in. So that's why we push them all in because they could very well come to
So can they change their mind at any?
anytime. We had folks who literally homeschooled out, didn't like it after a week, re-enrolled, didn't like it here, and then homeschooled out again, and then came back and went. And that's not exaggeration.
There is a little caveat that if you're a homeschooler, if you're a school choice person and you go to homeschool, you're out of the district. So that's in our letter.
It's in our letter,
Just be aware if you're a school choice student and you homeschool, you then have to go back to the lottery.
And I think it's important too that people understand that you don't just decide to be homeschooled, you have to apply to your home district.
Absolutely.
And be approved to homeschool, and there's a process.
There's a process.
So some of us, looking at it, would not be capable of homeschooling, and the best thing would say no to me, as much as it did. So, anyway. Okay, so thank you, school choice then, we are on target to follow our policy. We, again, in August, we'll bring this up again and review. Okay. Anything else for your superintendent report that I think we covered quite a bit, so. Next up, we have curriculum instruction, and Kate, do you want to come join us?
Okay, I'm going to be unless you
Can you
Lyman has had some students in history at the high school come to him and say, we're gonna be seniors next year, it'd be great if you could offer us this AP course in world history. And, this was, initiated by students, so he's taken the necessary steps to kind of make that happen. I think you could probably look forward to a program of studies change in your July meeting. Great addition.
I love it with students,
Me too.
that they saw the opportunity, they
Yeah.
use the classes out there, and they work together to.
Yeah, and he's so mental to it, there's hoops he has to jump through to make this happen, and he's willing to do that, so. Great. No, we wrapped up, STAR testing for end of year, and so we'll have some of those results soon.
Okay, next up will be our subcommittee reports. What I wanted to do prior to this meeting was send out a listing of subcommittees, but I wanted an opportunity to talk to Dr. Kesman and look at some committees first, just to get some feedback on the committees we've had and any changes we might want to, and make sure that they align with what's in his mind for how we should run things. There's not really much change, but we did in the past have our academic and administrative subcommittees combined, because the 3 members on both committees were the same. So it just became kind of routine that we met and we do this combined meeting. We are going to split those out, and we can probably make something like the administrative meeting probably quarterly instead of having to be monthly. Academic really should be a monthly meeting, because a lot of things come up, a lot of the things that the school presents, they should be vetted through that academic subcommittee first. So that will be split out. So what I've done based on that conversation is I have come up with my listing here of who's on which committee. So I'm going to send this out, and I'm really going to send it this time to everybody. Wednesday, so a good chance you'll get it by Friday. And ask everybody to take a look at the subcommittees for current members. If you're on a subcommittee and you don't want to be on it anymore, please just let me know. If everyone else can look, we typically have 3 members on a subcommittee, and we do that because that's not a quorum of people. It's typically anything that comes out of the subcommittee. When you come to the table, if you've agreed to something in subcommittee, you have to be in favor of that idea once it gets to the table, and we can't have too many, more than 3 people, because then there are other 5 who could vote that down if it wasn't something that the committee had a vote on. So that's the reason we keep it at 3. So you'll see this list. What I was thinking of doing is everyone can let me know what committees interested in doing the order. So if you give me 3 or 4 committees, and what I'll try and do is match up everybody's interest and choice, so that you may not get your first choice depending on who's really interested. But I'll try and get you, especially some of the new members, there's some really good subcommittees. Like facilities, it doesn't sound like it'd be exciting, but we get to hang out with Hank. And yeah, facilities, it's actually a really, it is a great subcommittee. That was like one of my first subcommittees, and it was just nice to learn about the facilities we have here and some of those things. So it is a great committee to be on from a learning perspective. The other thing that I want to mention is we will be going into contract negotiations with both the NDEA and the UFCW next year at some point. So those subcommittees are quiet, and then we go into negotiations, and then we're really busy because we've got to get that done prior to our contracts expiring on June 30th of 2022. So if you're interested in that, just know there is a time commitment, and it typically happens over a couple of months. We're meeting, usually weekly. Sometimes it's a little more often, sometimes a little more spaced out, but there is a rush of meetings at one time. There's also a committee on here called Labor Management Committee. In the off-season of negotiations with the NDEA, we have a subcommittee where we just kind of get together with the NDEA folks and just talk. So that if there's an issue that comes up that doesn't really need to be negotiated, but just, hey, this is going on, and it's really helpful in communication between the committee, the superintendent, and with the NDEA. So that's something that we probably won't have any activity on in the upcoming year because we'll be negotiating, but after that, so just keep that in mind. And I think that's all I have have to offer. So I will send this out and then with all that information to all on there for you, and then we can get those. Typically, we like to start running the subcommittees usually in September. We get back to school, we let Dr. Casimir do his welcome to school spiel, which is if anyone can get free for it, he usually doesn't make out presentation, makes fun of everybody, including himself, that's good, all good. And then in September, we kick up. So each subcommittee needs a chair. I think our policy says that as the chair, I would select the chair, but I'm not going to just pick someone to talk through. Usually it's once your subcommittee meets, you guys figure it out. But anyway, we'll go through all that once we get the committee selected. So, yes.
Could you also, just talk about the finance?
Oh, yeah, you know what? Thank you for bringing that up. So we've done a couple of things. Our finance subcommittee, this past year, we went back to a traditional subcommittee with 3 people on it. Prior to that, for a couple of years, we met as a committee as a whole to focus on finance. I don't know what I'm going to look at Hank and Lori about what we thought was better and more effective. It was a weird year this past year anyway. So, and whatever the will of the committee is, if we want to meet as a committee as a whole, I think having the finance subcommittee did help those who were able to, especially in some of these grants, to really focus and get things done quickly versus as a committee as a whole. But again, that's up to the committee. What we typically like to do is when budget time arises, we go into, we do have 2 meetings a month. And one of those meetings will focus more on finance rather than general business. So we try to stimulate that committee as a whole finance. So, I don't know if you have anything to that, Lori?
No, I was actually questioning because I knew it did go to the whole group at, at one point, and then, it didn't last year. I kind of lost track of it actually, so I was questioning.
So, I think I'd like to keep it at a subcommittee level for this upcoming year, but be more formal with the finance meetings, especially prior to budget time. And as I said, it was really a very difficult year because it was on the finance subcommittee. And even that, it still felt like there were so many moving parts, so many things happening. And we're still trying to figure out what our budget is. So I'd like to go forward, but we can, and hey, if we get halfway through the year and people say, no, what, we really all need to do it, then we'll switch it up.
I think certainly during the budget season, during the year, what the budget is, where it should be.
You know what? To piggyback on that, it seemed that we have 3 new members. I'm wondering if maybe this is the year that we all, it's one of those gather.
So what I can propose then is why don't we take, I would say maybe from December, January, February, and March gets into budget years, but definitely from December, January, February. Why don't we make the first meeting that we have planned a finance focused meeting for this committee as a whole? And our second meeting will be our regular business meeting. And I think that will accomplish, we'll keep the subcommittee in place, so if there's things that need to get addressed throughout the year so that the whole committee doesn't have to meet every, so, because hopefully that first Wednesday of the month meeting doesn't have to happen. But why don't we do that then? So let's see, December, January, and February, we'll do a finance focus meeting, and that'll bring forth all that budget information. I also think, to just finance discussion is we weren't able to have I think called the charter board meetings. And we need to do that again. So that usually happens. I know we try to have one in October. So once school gets back in and we see what the, knock on wood, the no drains and that truly is in place, we can get something scheduled with the 2 select boards and the finance committees and the advisory board in Templeton. And maybe in the October timeframe and then in that January timeframe to have the boards. Because I know we usually try to give both the towns as kind of our first preview of the budget. So we really need to make that happen again. And I think that'll help all of us as well. Anything else? Okay, so I'll get that list out. And other than that, we had no correspondence that needed to be addressed tonight. Next meeting date is July 21st. As of this point, we'll be in person here at 5:30. So again, this is one of those ones where we don't have a first Wednesday of the month meeting, third, unless of course something comes up that will need us to, this attention. All that as we see it. So the next regular meeting is July 21st. And at this point, we do need to go into executive session. So I would entertain a motion to go into executive session, MGL chapter 38, section 21, number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining litigation, UFCW and or the NDA, if the open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair declares. This meeting will return into open session immediately. So prior to accepting the motion, I just want to double check with Mrs. Lyons. We're going to end this particular YouTube feed for anyone watching, and we're going to set up a new one because we will come out of the executive session and set up a new feed that Mrs. Lyons will get out there so anyone who wants to watch when we come back. I don't know when that'll be because of course our business will come back. There will be a link out on Facebook for that. So I would entertain that motion then. I have a motion by Mr. Mason, a second by Mr. Graves. We will do a roll call vote. Mr. Graves.
Yes.
Ms. French? Yes. Mrs. Mattson? Yes. Mr. Mason?
Aye.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
And Mrs. Reese says yes. So again, we will enter into executive session. Terry, thank you for coming tonight.
Sorry, I didn't-
Face of like you came.
I was on select board time, 6:30.
Yeah, well,
Won't do that again.